Hey, it's Love and Relo. I'm Ben Cross, your host. I am joined by Zara Najam. How are you, Zara?
I'm good, Ben. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for being on Love and Relo today. It's so nice to have you on a Monday. Where in the world are you right now?
I am in sunny Los Angeles. Winter is nowhere to be found out here.
Sunny Los Angeles. So it's like 40 degrees, and this is a great day for us out here in Detroit.
Gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But now you weren't always in LA, right?
No, I'm originally from Texas, so I can't say we have real winters there either. But it is a little bit more wintry than out here in LA. So, yeah.
So, little known fact, I was born in Texas.
You did mention that during one of your other broadcasts the other day. That's right.
Where in Texas do you hail from?
Houston.
Okay, the second best city in Dallas, or in Texas. Yeah, I was born in Dallas, but you went to UT?
Yes, I'm a Longhorn. I went to UT Austin, and then I went to law school at Baylor as well. And then I've also lived in Dallas for about 3 years, if that makes it a little bit better.
No, that's fine. You figured it out. That's cool. So then what? Tell me. Okay, help me out with the story here, and I'm gonna log in here on LinkedIn real quick and make sure we give shout outs to people. If you're watching, please drop your company name, maybe your location. Where are you watching from? If the weather's spectacular, let me know. And then also, obviously we'll give a shout out to the company as we get started here with Zara. So Zara, so anyway, going back to what you were talking about before. What was that? So you started in Texas and then you ended up in California. Can you give me like a quick little synopsis of that?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been practicing as an attorney for 8 years now. So the first 5 years I was in Texas, I did civil litigation. And about 4 years ago, I moved to LA. And that was when I made the switch over to the immigration world. I was looking to get away from the lifestyle of litigation and kind of get more into a corporate setting.
Okay.
That's when I switched over to immigration. And since then I've been in the industry for about 4 years, which is why I'm so excited that I was invited to speak here, because I know you've had so many experienced guests here. So I'm excited to be included in that. But yeah, so that's when I started with immigration. I'm an immigrant myself.
Okay.
I was much younger when I came, but of course I saw my parents growing up in this country, and the anxiety and the stress and the difficulty of being an immigrant, but also the talent that immigrants, foreign nationals, bring to this country, and the opportunity that's there for both this country as well as for them, right? So that was really what fueled that change for me, and that's why I chose immigration specifically.
So where originally is your family from?
We're from Pakistan.
Pakistan. Okay. And how did that inform? Like, did that inform you getting into immigration? Like, or was that a part of it, or was it just coincidental?
Well, it was a little bit of both, right? So it was a good opportunity at the time that it came up, but then also I have a passion for it as well, right? As I was saying, growing up, I saw, our family friends, my own parents, just, the opportunity that comes with being in this country, and the talent that immigrants provide for this country is also invaluable. So I've experienced that firsthand, and I'm still first generation. I do experience a lot of the same challenges in the workplace as well. But again, so that was where what my background was and where my passion for immigration came from specifically. Yeah.
So you've been doing this for 4 years, and I think we connected at Worldwide ERC.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I do vaguely remember that, because there's so many people there. But then, of course, you started doing LOVE+RELO, and I started watching you, and that's how I really got to know you.
Yeah.
Of course, a lot of other people that you've had on here. You really get to know people's stories through your show, and I'm so happy that you're doing it. Really.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I'm really happy you're a part of it as well. I got Roy Ramirez checking in real quick here on LinkedIn. Hello, everyone. Many moves in Broadview, Illinois, waiting on a winter storm. Woohoo! We haven't had much this year. We're supposed to get probably the most snow we've gotten starting tomorrow. So let me know where you're watching from here and what the weather's like. The weather is the topic du jour as we are about to get snowed in here in the Midwest, but not for Zara. Nope.
Sorry. That's why I just have great lighting. It's sunny outside. I don't even turn on the light in the room. Sorry.
So
for you all,
I wanted to have you on. Not only, do I think you're really dynamic and kind of a rising star, frankly, in the relocation world, but I wanted to have an immigration expert on because I think that there's so much here in this space. Frankly, I don't know much about immigration, but so many of my clients and my partners and my RMCs, we're going through the struggles every day in the immigration world and relying on partners such as yourself to help guide them. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about strategically and tactically, without getting too much in the weeds, but giving people some kind of broad immigration advice. So what are some of the strategies that you've been kind of seeing going on lately?
Sure. So generally speaking, right, this is something that we've beaten to death. Unfortunately, but I have to say it again, with U.S. immigration, with each new administration, you have a change in immigration policies, right? So it's very unpredictable generally, but especially with this administration, the theme has been delay and deny. Those are the words that we're using, right? It's unpredictable. It's very discretionary. So even when you have a qualified employee that should obviously, receive whatever immigration procedure you're filing for them, there's going to be either RFPs, which is RFEs, request for evidence issued on those cases, or just outright denial. So what I really advise my corporate clients to do is create a comprehensive immigration strategy for each employee, which just doesn't include, the H-1B filing or the one immigration process that they've chosen for them for US. I encourage my clients to say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. Probably submit them to the H-1B lottery. But if that doesn't work, what else can we do? Can we look at other countries? Do you have offices in other countries? Are there other immigrant-friendly countries that have process that your employees qualify for? And sit down and just set expectations at the front of don't expect this to be easy. Have a plan B, have a plan C. And then also inform your employees about it, right? So that they know, because they're the ones that are really going through this, right? We are just helping them along, but it's their families, right? It's the talent that we need to make sure that they're also comfortable, that they're being communicated with also, and that they know what to expect, that they're not disappointed.
So you mentioned a couple of things here. I want to stop you and ask you for a couple of things. So for requests for evidence, you said sometimes they ask for requests for evidence. What is request for evidence?
So that's when you initially submit a petition, and then the government reviews it and says, well, I think this is missing, or can you provide us more information on this aspect of the immigration? And so they issue a RFE, which is
and specifically, what types of information might they be looking for?
They might be looking for qualification. So is this employee really qualified to do the job that you're saying you're hiring them for? Do they have the degrees necessary? Yeah. Can you find, so there's a number of different ones depending on which procedure. A lot of them have to do with the specific roles that you're hiring the employee for and whether the qualifications are met, so that whether that employee has the background and the experience and the degrees that match up with the role that you're hiring them for.
So they actually look at the job description and they look at the degrees, and then they have to also make a determination whether or not you could have found that employee locally and sourced them here in the US before they...
That is a part of the process as well. Yes. So it depends on the process you're looking at as well. Now, also, when we're looking not just to US, but when we're looking at other countries, we also have to take into account a few other factors, right? So if you're a global mobility manager listening to this right now, or if you're a relo provider, I would say for a bigger picture sense, these are some of the factors that you can consider is what nationality is that employee? Because oftentimes, there are travel bans and travel restrictions in certain nationalities. it's more difficult to obtain visas for them, or it can take longer. So that's something that is unfortunately, whether we like to admit it or not, that is a factor. We can also look at, again, their degree, how long they've been working with your company, if they already are with your company. Can we do an intra-company transfer for them? What type, are they a managerial role? Are they an executive role? So there are those things as well. Also, where will their salary be paid? Will it be here in the US if they're going short-term business somewhere else, or will it be paid in the country that they're working?
Now why would it matter if you could do an intra-company transfer, or if their salary is being paid by a US business unit or a foreign business unit?
Well, intra-company transfer, then if you, for example, if a company has offices here and let's say in Germany, so in order to meet Germany's intra-company transfer requirements, they have to be working in another office for that company for a certain amount of years, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, to be able to utilize that intra-company route. Oftentimes, they have to be at a managerial level or above. To be able to utilize that intra-company route. So each type of visa has their own specific guidelines that you have to meet, right? So that's why it's very important that when you sit with your immigration counsel, when I sit with my corporate clients, I specifically look at the resume for this employee. I look at their educational history and say, okay, well, based on all of this, these are the options that we have for this employee. Oftentimes, employees in the IT industry, engineering, we have more options for them because that's talent. That's where the most talent demand is right now. So oftentimes that matters as well. Also, specific activities that they need to perform in whatever country that they're going. Are they going just to train? Are they going to attend conferences? Are they going to attend meetings? All of that has to be looked at. Say, okay, well, this is the proper immigration route. Well, is there an immigration route? So
you were saying you said a couple of things that I found really interesting. So going back initially to one of the things you said about, each administration's different and administrations change policies. I didn't realize that. So policies actually change under each administration. Is that accurate that every time there's a new president, they kind of have a new spin on things, or?
Well, so sometimes they're formally changed and sometimes it's just how they're implemented, right? Now they're exercised, which is what we're seeing. If you're talking about U.S. immigration,
yes.
With this administration is that they're becoming more strict, right? The way even though the policies may be the same, the way they're being applied by the immigration officers looking at these applications, they're becoming more strict and stringent in how they're applying their criteria, because it's all discretionary, right?
Yeah.
It is discretionary.
Well, I didn't realize how discretionary it was. So it's not a black and white, if they check this box, check that box, they're in. If they don't, they're not. It's
no. You have to make sure you satisfy their criteria to where immigration officer feels comfortable enough to issue that visa. And then also speaking of, because right now we're around the H-1B lottery time, your employee can meet all of the criteria and can be the most stellar employee and immigration. For sure, this is the person that's going to get the visa. They may not even get selected in the lottery. So there's only a certain amount of visas that are issued for H-1Bs every year, and because there's a higher demand for H-1B, you have to submit them in the lottery system, and so they may not even get selected. So it's random, it's chance. So that's why it's important that you have Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C, because if they don't get selected in the lottery, a lot of my clients come to me and say, Zara, where can we park this employee until next year? We can submit them in the lottery again, because there's no other option for this person. And so then we sit down and we look, okay, is Canada an option? Is UK an option? Where else does your company have offices? So that's the analysis that's done.
Really? So if I'm looking at bringing over, I don't know if an engineer is a good example or not. Say I'm looking at bringing over an engineer, and for some reason they get denied here in the U.S. So one of the strategies I might employ is looking at Canada. You're saying?
Yeah. So Canada actually, specifically for engineers, they have a global talent stream, which is a faster route to obtaining their visas to go work in Canada, because Canada is taking advantage of US shedding out talent, and they're opening their doors. And Ontario even has signs on their border that says open for business. They've changed their welcome signs to open for business, because they're taking that talent that US is not keeping, and they're saying come over to us. And they've offered a variety of different options. Global Talent Stream is one that I know I've used for my clients, where they're able to go through the whole immigration process in about 1 to 2 months, and then after they're in Canada, they can even apply for permanent residency for in 3 years, as opposed to the 5 years that sometimes that's necessary. So they're really wanting to welcome talent, and so sometimes when talent goes there, they want to stay there long term, because that's more stable environment.
We got 20 people logged in right now on LinkedIn Live. We got 15 people on Facebook. If you're watching this right now, please go ahead and leave a like. Hit that celebration button, the like button. I appreciate it. It means the world. Also, go ahead and leave a comment or a question for Zahra. We've got a couple here. I want to read a few here and give some shout outs. One, we got some more perfect weather going on there down in Florida. Janet, love you, Janet. Gorgeous 79-degree day down there. And your excuse for your 5 o'clock meeting. All right, let's see here. Sean, Ireland. Hey, Ben. Baker International in sunny Dallas, Texas. No snow. Oh my goodness. I could do this from anywhere. Why do I sit in Detroit? Dude, I don't understand. All right, Roy Ramirez. Besides the cost of moving your furniture and belongings, what is the paperwork cost? Do you need an attorney to migrate here? And what are the average fees for an attorney?
I think that's all case dependent, right? So you'd have to sit down with your counsel, immigration attorney, to determine what kind of a visa you qualify for.
So the first answer is yes, you need an attorney.
So you don't have to have an attorney to file for immigration.
Okay.
I advise it. I know people do a lot of marriage and family related immigration stuff on their own, petitions on their own. I think with business, when it comes to if you're an employee, you really should talk to your employer about because the employer has to sponsor you, right? So you really need to have that discussion with your employer. And I guess we'll go through this a little bit later as well, as the employer should have policies and procedures in place that determine when they should sponsor an employee and when they shouldn't, and whether they want to sponsor one or not. So, and then immigration attorney usually is involved when it comes to business immigration.
Awesome. Excellent.
And I would, just to finish answering that question, usually in terms of fees, your employer, so I can only speak to the business immigration aspect of it, your employer usually has a contract with their counsel, but most of the time it is a flat fee for at least immigration attorneys and their services. There are some situations where we do hourly. I think it could be dependent on the immigration, but most immigration firms do work on flat fee basis.
Okay. And then Rory, if you want a discount, Zahra did tell me that she has a promo code you can use.
Ben is awesome. That's it.
That's it. Get you a free cup of coffee at our office. All right. Let's see here. Stephen Meyer, Arpin driver, Fredericksburg, Virginia. This is interesting. So since the driver checked in here, he's a household goods moving driver. As you know, there's a huge labor shortage in the truck driving business and the household goods industry specifically, not only drivers, but also with labor. And there's some companies that have been actually working as an agency to get people from like Eastern Europe, like Romania specifically, over here to be movers for let's say like for 6 months. I think it's a 6-month period. Have you heard of this at all, Zahra?
None of my clients are in the trucking industry or in the trucking industry at all. No. And I'm curious, what type of visa they're using for them. But, none of my clients are in that industry. So.
I think it's an H-1B, but is that impossible that it's an H-1B?
Well, with the H-1B, they would have to submit for the lottery. And the H-1B lottery only takes place once a year, which is coming up here in March.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do submit them in the lottery, and assuming that they meet the criteria and they do get selected and they get the visa, sure, that is one route. but that only happens once a year. So I'm curious to hear, what visas they're utilizing if they're not meeting that deadline for March.
Yeah, and if you're watching this and you have any better information than I do, please let me know, because I think this is fascinating, because people are getting very creative when trying to figure out this labor shortage in the moving business. Let's see here. We've got somebody checking in here from Facebook.
Houston, yes.
H-Town in the house. Samia says, gloomy Monday in Houston and 68 degrees is very informative. Awesome. Excellent. Thank you. Nicholas Curtins, hi from sunny San Diego. Coronavirus issue has started delaying arrivals of international assignees and their destination services. How is it impacting your immigration services? What are you seeing about coronavirus?
Oh, it's caused, especially in Singapore, it's caused a lot of my clients to have a lot of problems. And I think this brings up a good point, and I kind of want to transition into that using this, is you have to be able to collaborate with other players in the relocation industry to really come up with a comprehensive plan, right? Like, so immigration attorneys, what happens is sometimes we work in silos, and we're not the best in the relocation industry to connect with, other relocation providers like housing and transportation. Okay. And tax advisors, right, to come up with a comprehensive plan, especially when it comes to these emergency, not even especially, but just even from the strategic planning point, right? Like, we just think, okay, well, this is the immigration perspective. Well, this is the best option for your employee. This is the problem right now we're dealing with. We're just dealing with the immigration issue, which is not realistic. We really need to work on establishing connections with tax and relocation providers and housing providers so that we can communicate within ourselves to handle emergencies like this or handle any planning of any type of immigration.
Give me some examples. How would something like that work?
Okay, so I'll give you a real life example. I recently had a client who wanted to open up a new office. They were New York based and they want to open up a new office overseas, and they had two options. They either had Denmark, and they believe they were looking at Sweden. And so, if with immigration attorneys, they were saying, well, the in-house global mobility team was having to do the work of, okay, let's look at the immigration aspects. What do we need to get the assignees to this new office? But they couldn't decide whether they should be Denmark, this should open the office in, or Sweden. So what I did was I said, okay, let's bring in everybody. Let's bring in the tax advisors. Let's bring in employment counsel. Let's bring in the immigration person, and let's sit down and talk about the tax incentives of whether it should be in Denmark or should be in Sweden. Or let's talk about immigration-wise, what will be the easiest immigration route to send your employees from the US to Denmark or Sweden, in terms of the requirements. Employment-wise, what are the criteria that you need to meet? Do you need to think about healthcare insurance as part of, as part of the immigration process? Social Security, is that an issue you need to consider? These are all costs that the company has to think about, right? Can they save on the tax end? Are they willing to pay the higher immigration fees for Denmark versus Sweden? All of these things. What about employment? What are the conditions of employment, vacations, holiday pays in those countries? All of that needs to be considered. And all three of us sat on the same conference call with the HR and the global mobility specialist. And we all talked about the pros and cons of each country when it comes to tax, employment, immigration. And then that way, we provided a comprehensive overview, and then they took it back to their internal business teams and said, okay, well, here's the pros and cons of opening up an office in Sweden versus Denmark. What do you think? And if we had just left it up to the HR or the global mobility specialist to connect those dots, and it would be a high burden, right? They would have to think about the pros and the cons. They would have to be flexible. They would have to go back and forth and communicate, be the point of contact between all three of us. Why not just sit down? Why not save time? There's less miscommunication between the different parties, and you're really just giving the client a good comprehensive picture all in one.
So you're not only operating in like a reactive tactical mode where it's like, here, process these visa requests, but you're actually operating strategically to say, from a planning standpoint, to say Denmark or Sweden. and let's run down the cost. And by the end of that conversation, was that HR professional? I mean, did they have an idea of the actual dollars and cents, or marks and whatever Sweden uses kind of currency? Did they have an actual sense of the actual financial impact of those decisions?
They sure did. They sure did. Especially not just from our services perspective, but also in terms of the corporate tax perspective. The employee, how much are they going to be taxed? Also, if we were to, the next step should be to involve relocation providers, really, and how much is it going to cost them to relocate and house these people, these employees, these assignees in whatever country that they
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right.
We did, and we afterwards we followed up, and each of us gave our immigration costs, tax costs, and they were able to sit down and have some concrete numbers to work with. Yeah,
that's really fascinating, because as we talk to our global mobility managers all over the globe, and they struggle with this idea of getting a seat at the table and moving from reactive to proactive and strategic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're talking about is having strategic conversations instead of saying, we've decided Denmark, just process it for Denmark, right? It's like, okay, now let's say, what if this, what if that, and what is your thoughts on it? And it's not just even send me a bid. It's not even just like send me a bid for it. It's like, let's talk through the nuance of it, right? Yeah. And I think part of helping our mobility manager customers get their seat at the table is, in a way, them opening up a seat at their own table for us to come and bring our expertise, because you bring such a deep amount of knowledge. I bring a deep amount of knowledge. All these service providers who are experts in their own field bring a deep amount of knowledge. But unfortunately, a lot of times we're on the other end of a one-way email that says, get this done and send me a bill. And it'd be a lot more interesting, I think. And I think everybody would be more successful if we had the kinds of conversations that you're talking about.
And save a lot of time, really, and make the global mobility specialists' job a lot easier, because we're not leaving it up to them to communicate with us, right? We're not leaving it up to them to connect the dots for their internal teams.
How do you get to that level of relationship, though, where they say, Zahra, help me out. I've got this situation and I don't know what to do. And they bring you in and they really pull back the curtain and let you in.
It's overtime. It's establishing that trust.
You charge overtime for that?
No, it's just a long-term relationship, right? You have to, and also I would recommend, give clients, educate clients wherever you can without charging them and nickel and diming them for every piece of advice you give them, right? Yeah. Make them feel like you're their partner. You're not here to make money on every single time they pick up the phone and ask for help.
Well, I think that's key with you too, right? For me, I don't make money until I ship something, right? But with you bill on an hourly, and I'm sure your tax provider is the same type of deal, right? And so therefore you would have some trepidation perhaps. It's like, hey, I don't know if I want to incur a bill on this. I haven't even moved them yet. We haven't even know if they've accepted an assignment. I wouldn't even know how to bill this thing to another business unit yet. But I think that's really self-aware of you to understand what some of the challenges might be in your specific role.
Yeah. And it's also being involved in the industry and speaking to them and having candid conversations with your clients. And also one other thing I noticed is educational marketing also helps establish you as a trusted and legitimate player in the industry. So do those educational webinars, right? If there's an immigration update, just offer them for free. Do the email newsletters, monthly newsletters, and provide that information so that when they're used to getting free information from you, so when they do have a problem that they need help with, they know that you're a trusted source and you're out there and you do have the education necessary because you've been providing them that regular educational marketing, right? So they're more likely to pick up the phone.
Awesome. That's a great story. I hope people really hear that and start to understand how to better leverage their supplier partners. It's a fantastic story.
Kind of on that note, I know that some immigration law firms, at least, are kind of the larger ones, are moving in that direction where they're offering their clients that one-stop shop, right? They're kind of teaming up with accounting firms and saying, well, if you use us, we'll take care of immigration and tax at the same place. That's great. I think that's where we need to head as an industry, is just offering those once, referrals at least, if it's not one-stop shop, but at least say, hey, okay, if you come to us, I can't advise you on tax, but I know enough about tax at least to know, hey, here's a red flag. You probably need to bring in a tax player, and here's somebody I really know and trust. Why don't you contact them? Or maybe I can contact them for you and we can work together. So you're not always waiting for the global mobility person or the HR person to connect those dots and say, okay, maybe we need to have everybody. You can also offer that as a practice solution.
That's funny you mentioned that, because somebody reached out to me that was watching, one of these, and we went to the same college, same years, and we had some funny stories and talked about people that we knew in common. We had never really met each other, but we kind of had some laughs, and he works for a tax provider. And he's like, yeah, sometimes people ask me about household goods movers, and, sometimes I'm in a position where I can refer some movers. I'm like, well, that would be cool. I appreciate that. Thank you. The guy would never think in a million years that a tax provider would ever, refer a mover. But going back to collaboration, it's another way to add value.
And that's why being involved in these, Worldwide ERC or SHRM, these organizations that bring all of us together, because we're all part of the same relocation industry, right? Like if immigration doesn't work, nothing else is going to work. We have to think about tax because that's a reality. We have to think about relocation services and moving and transportation, we all work in the same industry. So come and meet those people, network, find out who's good, who's not good, find out what's going on, attend these conferences, take that, especially with attorneys. I really encourage that, because I find that we are very good about going to our conferences, legal conferences. So, American Immigration Lawyers Association, everybody goes to those conferences. I haven't seen as many of the, mid-sized to smaller firms.
Sorry, I missed that one. I apologize. I did not make it.
You would be bored at those, but it's a networking opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Take it. Yeah.
We got a couple more comments here. Nora Luna, I'm forwarding this to some of my HR friends. Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora.
Thank you, Nora. That's so nice. It's so cool when you get to see just people you don't even know just saying nice things. Sometimes it's just one word. Lots of S's at the end,
Well, I'm hitting it home with some people. So.
Yeah, that's so cool. Love it. Let's see here. Rory Ramirez wanted to clarify, I don't need a discount. I'm not migrating to Detroit. Go White Sox. This stuff, sometimes you get some really thought-provoking stuff, and sometimes you don't. I love you, Rory. Georgia, yes, love the weather. She's a Floridian. Gabriel Brown checking in from Scottsdale, Arizona. Thanks, Gabriel. Let's see here, Lena. Do you see? Okay, here's a question for you. Do you see that the tax implications for U.S. nationals have slowed down the U.S. international moves in comparison to 15 years ago?
That's a great question. I would love to ask a tax advisor about that. So
I was afraid you were going to say a mover, so I'm glad you said a tax advisor.
Well, the tax implications, I'm assuming the tax advisor would know a bit more about that, especially over a 15-year history. But maybe we need to bring a mover and a tax advisor together to have that conversation, right?
Golly. A mover and a tax advisor walk into a conference. All right, Lena, I'm going to go ahead and offer some totally unfounded speculation, reckless speculation. That's my specialty. I'm going to say that overall, international moves are up, although the taxes on the U.S. side, what we've seen from a U.S. standpoint, and for those of you who don't know, with the tax changes of a couple of years ago, I think it was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I believe is what it was called. The president rolled out a couple of years ago, lowered the corporate tax from, I think, 35% to 21%, something like that. But it also took away a lot of the individual tax write-offs, and one of them being relocation expenses on moving, the moving tax deduction, right? And so now household goods household goods benefits are taxable as income to employees. And so I think where Lena's going with this is, have you seen an impact to the moves? overall global mobility is up and continues to be up. I think what we're seeing in this country is that the way that it is the way is dispensed as a benefit is changing. So we're seeing more lump sums and less managed. If you've watched anything that I've done in the past, I've done 2 episodes in the past couple months regarding how to avoid moving scams, because they're so prominent and common out there. And so my take on that is you still need to have a managed approach because you have a duty of care situation. So that's me. I don't have any data to support that. I would be very curious what Jesse Van Sass or what Chuck White, Jesse Van Sass, FEDE Secretary General, or Chuck White, International Association of Movers. I'd be very curious to see what they would say about that. In fact, I'm going to tag them in this question as well to see if we can get a little bit of discussion around it. But that's what I've got on that. Any other comments on that question? No.
I do agree that, generally speaking, despite the stricter adjudication policies and the unpredictable political climate worldwide, companies are continuing to expand internationally, and we don't see that slowing down at all in the near future. So,
I do want happening. Going back to your question though, or going back to one of the things you were talking about before, about choosing one country over another, and do you go to Canada or do you go to the U.S.? Do you go to Denmark? Do you go to Sweden? And doing a cost comparison of both scenarios going into it, with gross up, so your cost of moving your household goods is going to go up 35 to 50%. And that's the biggest or second biggest cost item that you're going to have for a relocation. So if you were to do a side-by-side comparison of, let's say, Canada to the US, maybe that could be a deal breaker. Not to mention the more difficult nature of just getting people into the US. So, that could come into play. It definitely could. We got some more questions coming in from the book here. Comment followed by a question. And I'm not sure, is it Hira or Hira? I'm gonna say it's Hira. I don't know. Hira. What do you like most about your job? I'm assuming she's asking you, Zara.
Well, you can answer if you'd like as well.
I will also answer, but you first.
Sure. So I think being able to meet people from so many different cultures, backgrounds, right? Whether it's the employees that I'm working with, or it's in my case, I do global immigration, so outbound immigration as well. And so I oftentimes have to involve foreign immigration co-counsel from the country we're working with. And so just, thinking about the different differences in culture, the way we communicate. Oftentimes we have to be careful about, for example, here, the weekend is, Saturday and Sunday, but Middle East countries, Friday and Saturday is the weekend. So, things like that, just these interesting things are how, people bring different, I guess, like they tend to share their family backgrounds with me and their personal stories, and what immigrating to the US or immigrating to a different country, what that means for them personally. So hearing those personal stories and learning these little cultural nuances, that's what I find more exciting than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, similar but different. But I mean, because I don't, I'm not as deep on the cultural side, but I mean, the people. Right. I mean, that's the whole reason I made this show called Love and Relo and put love first, because it's really about the people and connecting with all these people. I mean, we go to conferences, we partner with people in a very deep and meaningful way. We impact each other's lives. We collaborate. We grow together in our career paths. And I just love the people. I mean, I get presents. I got this Starbucks, tumbler today from Jen Green at Sweet Home Chicago. I got a book today. This is just my mail from today. Okay, I got this right here. Have you read this before?
I have not. Shake hands. Actually, I've heard of this. Yes, that is a very important book, especially working cross-cultural. Yes.
Yeah. I got this. I got this book also from Jim Barber. Like, I mean, this is amazing. I'm over here.
You are having the author of The Go-Giver come in a couple of days. Is that right? I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for plugging this. I don't know if I can get it in the shot here. But yeah, I'm having the author Bob Berg come on to talk about this on Wednesday. So tomorrow, I've got a couple of my friends, Jim Barber, the guy that gave me this, and Shelley Bishop from RAI, coming to my office. We're going to talk about the book and answer some questions, take some comments. And then the next day, we have Bob Berg, the author, coming on, and I'm going to ask him some questions. And have you read this book?
I have read this, so I'm 8 chapters in, so I haven't finished it completely. But as a whole, I think what we were talking about, Ben, is I think the relocation industry. I'm relatively a newcomer, and I have found the relocation industry gives, and they mentor, and they welcome you, and you just have to seek out. And you have to be curious, and you have to be friendly, and you have to be not afraid to go up to people. But people are willing to help you. They're willing to, mentor you. Like I was telling you, I have found formal mentors and informal mentors within the couple of years that I've been in the industry.
Right.
And everyone's so welcoming and so kind and just willing to connect, and not just because they want a business development opportunity, just because they like you as a person, right? And they want to help you. So
yeah, okay. So I agree 100% with what you're saying. But then I talk to some other people, and they say things like, yeah, I go to these conferences and they're all the same. And, I don't know. They're negative about it, right? About the whole thing, or they'll say things like, oh, the industry's going down the tubes, and back in my day, blah, blah. Like, they're just so negative. And I'm just like, where are you coming from with this? 'Cause I'm having this amazing experience right now. And then I got to think, and listening to you talk about this too, I got to think that it has a lot to do with the person who's receiving the mentorship and the guidance. And I mean, I think it's you maybe as part of the reason you're having such a great experience.
Well, you have to be receptive, right? You can't just go in there think, you can't go with attitude, I know everything, and let me tell you what I know, and let me not tell you what, how good I am at what I do. Right. I think people don't really, people want to know, okay, are you curious? Am I wasting my time mentoring you or telling you this information? Or are you really going to make use of it? I listen. Listening is underrated, right? I listen and I follow up and I remember, right? You have to remember the people. These conferences are huge. I understand that. But I'll tell you something. It's the same people over and over and over again.
I love it. It's true, though. I mean, yes, be curious.
Yeah, and remember people, and remember the stories that they tell you, and follow up with them if you used whatever tips and advice that they gave you, and say, thank you so much. This is what happened. And then people actually feel like, okay, this person's listening. I did bring some value. I'm going to continue to do this for them. So yeah, I want to absorb everything. I want to be like a sponge. I want to know what this is about. And that's how I learned, to be honest with you. I didn't know about the different players that are involved in the relocation industry until I went out there to these conferences and started talking to people, not because you could bring me business, but because, hey, who are you? I want to know what do movers do,
Well, and that's one of the principles of the book too, right? Is giving to people without expectation of return. And I think a lot of times we go to these conferences and some people say, oh, there weren't enough corporate mobility people there. There weren't enough customers. There weren't enough this, or there weren't enough that, because they're only thinking about what's in it for me. I have to find customer, get business, find customer, get business. And if I don't do that, then it's not successful. But if you start thinking in terms of how can I enrich the lives of those around me? How can I enrich myself by learning about what Zara does or by what so-and-so does? I mean, and just leave like fired up and knowledgeable. To me, I think that's the goal.
And kind of taking that a little bit further, Ben, what I found is people don't do business with you because you have so many awards, or because you work for that and that company that is so well known. People really do business with you if they like you as a person, right? Sure. And of course, they have to believe you know what you're doing, and you're going to be able to carry out the work that they're hiring you for. But people have to like your personality. That goes across industries. I don't care where you work and what you're doing. If they don't like you as a person, probably not going to come seek you out, especially with so much other competition these days. It doesn't matter how many.
So I agree with you. Like you, trust you, make sure, be capable. If you can check those 3 boxes, you're there. How do you differentiate yourself? I mean, you've led, immigration practices. I mean, how do you differentiate yourself, your business?
I think it goes back to sitting down and having a conversation on a larger level and understanding, okay, what do you need? Maybe I can give it to you, maybe I can't, but tell me what you need. Where are you struggling with? What are your challenges? And just being active listener, offering advice. This kind of goes back to the book you're talking about, right? If you can't help, let me connect you with somebody who can, and just being authentic, genuine, which is extremely important, because a lot of these conferences, sometimes these networking events, people are just there to pass out business cards or just there to talk about business opportunity. It's really a long-term relationship building game.
Yeah.
Right? Be authentic, be genuine, help where you can, check in, say hello, take the people out to lunch, coffee, connect on.
Check-in thing that you mentioned is so key, because how many times do we think of somebody and we don't take that opportunity to let them know? Like I might see a pastrami sandwich and I think of Joe, but I didn't tell Joe, hey Joe, saw this pastrami sandwich, thinking of you. Or hey, Jane, I was at Starbucks and I was thinking what a nice tumbler this was. Like we think of people, and that's an opportunity to just ping somebody and say, hey, what's going on in your world? Thinking of you.
Yeah. Or like if you're reading an article and it's helpful to somebody, just say, hey, you know what, this is something I read, maybe it's helpful to you, and just passing it along. Hope you're having a good day. Something like that. Yeah.
Awesome. I want to ask you a couple more like immigration, based questions here. So since I do have your expertise here, digital nomadism is something that we are seeing. It's something I aspire to be. I want to be sitting in Thailand this time next year, just crushing some Thai food, doing this on like a little canoe or something. So what do we need to worry about? What does my boss need to be thinking about when I'm in Thailand doing this? What is digital nomadism doing to the immigration landscape?
Yeah, we're seeing a rise in remote workers, right? That's digital nomads, people just traveling and working in other countries without obtaining work authorization or permits, just because it's extremely important to know, just because you can get into a country on a visitor visa or even a business visitor visa, you don't have to have file any formal paperwork to get your visa, does not mean that you're authorized to work in that country.
So wait, I could go to Thailand and visit, but as soon as I crack my laptop, start my webcam, start doing LOVE+RELO, am I working?
It could be construed as work. Yeah. And depending on which country you're at, they're very strict with how work is defined. And each country defines work very differently. Even sometimes opening up your laptop or going on your phone and checking emails, that could be work as well. There's obviously, you have to kind of balance risk with compliance. But if you're like, I know, with US citizens, I often see this, they say, well, we don't really need a visa to go travel to some country in Europe or Asia. So that means I'll just take my computer along and, do meetings and check emails and do productive work for my clients. And just because your clients are not located in that country, or you're doing work, based overseas, like your work is still based in the US, whatever it is, does not mean that you're relieved of tax, especially. That's something important. Tax, you may have to pay tax depending on how many days you're in that country and you're considered to be working. Employers need to think about that. Also, just because you're not in that country working on site at a client site or in an office, does not mean you're working. Oftentimes, meetings, the nature of meetings, even if you're going just to host meetings and you're not doing any productive work, maybe those meetings are also work.
So are basically 100% of digital nomads out of tax compliance?
I find that tax is probably one of the biggest ones. Yeah. I mean, listen, you have to talk to a tax attorney, and sometimes you don't have to pay tax in those countries because we have double tax treaties that will exempt you from paying tax as long as you're paying it, in the US or whatever. But doesn't mean you don't have to file paperwork to take advantage of those double tax treaties also. And so that's something your employer needs to be worried about. Working on vacation sometimes in these countries, also the employer needs to be worried about that. So actually, then that brings up a good point, because what companies really need to do is establish formal policies and procedures around immigration and tax and whatever, whatever aspect of mobile working or relocation or just generally global mobility, so that employees know, okay, this is what I can do, what I cannot do. Here's how I need to track the days that I'm out of the country and working. There need to be some specific guidelines that are very clearly communicated to employees from the company, so that there's no confusion.
Give me an example. So I'm a multinational company with offices in the U.S., London, and Singapore, right? Yeah. And and you're coming to me and you're telling me I need to have an immigration policy. What types of things might that include?
Okay, so I think I'll give you, I guess, a few different tips on how employers, or how I help my corporate clients establish immigration policies. Of course, I can't speak to tax, but I'll speak specifically to immigration. So the first I recommend is retain immigration counsel. It's a plug for me, but really, you really need to, even if you're a small size company just starting to get into the immigration process for your talent, anywhere from small to large companies, you need to think about it. Think about what your immigration counsel needs to provide for your talent pool, for your employees. Do they need to do just US visas? Do you need to think about global? Do you want your employees to pick up the phone and talk to the immigration counsel and incur those costs? Or are you okay with emails? Are you okay with them just going online to check their visa tracking status, all of that stuff? So hire immigration counsel. Then you need to set into place certain guidelines, like when are you going to start sponsoring employees? So what type of role are you considering for sponsorship? I guess when will the employer, also not just sponsorship for non-immigrant visas, but also for permanent residency? When are you going to offer permanent residency to your employees? If permitted by law, are the employees going to share in costs? Are you going to sponsor their family members as well? Are you going to pay for that? If an employee leaves after you've sponsored them, if permitted by law, are they going to pay you back the immigration costs? Those are things that you need to think about and put into writing, right? So that everybody is on the same page about what they can expect. Also, establish a contact person within your company that is in charge of immigration, right? So that's the person that people know to go to when they say, oh, I need to go to Singapore for work, for a meeting. What do I do? What do I need to get? That person is the one that gives the approval for costs and for counsel to work on a case. That person's the one that you go to if there's emergencies, if there's travel emergencies, like, for example, the coronavirus. What are we doing as a company to handle those things? Make sure that everybody knows that contact person, and then that contact person also knows, okay, well, this is the policies. These are the people I need to go to obtain approval. They're knowledgeable about immigration or tax or whatever it is that they're the contact person for. Mm-hmm. And then I would say perform data analytics on your immigration system, right? So don't just say, oh, we're just going to continue to sponsor people. We're going to continue to let people take advantage of our immigration policies without maybe every quarter or maybe even every year sitting down and saying, okay, how much money have we spent on this immigration program? Can we find ways to make it more economical for us moving forward? Look at the visa, also track visa expiration dates and renewals for your employees. That's so important. Sometimes the clients say, okay, well, we got the visa, go, and they don't think about tracking their expiration dates. Look at, your employees' criminal histories and travel bans that they may be subject to, or any other travel restrictions, so that you have that information all in one place. So these data analytics, also the length of time that certain visas take to obtain and to be processed, so that you can know, okay, well, if I have a client, we need to send an employee to meet in Costa Rica in 6 months. When do I need to start that immigration process for me to be able to make that meeting? So you need to be able to have the immigration counsel that can provide you that information, documents required, timelines, process. So have some sort of a process to to initiate those visas and give yourself enough time to meet your business goals.
So this contact person within an organization, step 3 here, where does that person sit? Do they sit in HR? Do they sit in travel? Where do they typically sit?
It depends on how large the company is and how they're structured. I've seen just one HR that takes care of everything from payroll to immigration to tax, right? Because the company's smaller and they're growing. And then I've seen everything from larger companies that have a more sophisticated infrastructure in place, right? That have global global mobility managers, but not just global mobility managers, but also they specialize in tax. And then there's a team that specializes in immigration, and there's a team that works with just relocation companies. So it just depends on where you are. But as long as if you don't have one, as long as you're thinking about it and you're putting the framework in place, as opposed to flying by the seat of your pants and hoping things turn out right. So you really need to give it some thought if you see international movement coming into play for your business.
Well, this is some really great advice here. So
I love that quote. Thank you.
We do have another question here from Lena, another well thought question here. Let's see here. Have you come across good e-visas for giggers? I guess gig economy people, I'm guessing, with giggers.
Okay.
E-visas? Electronic visas?
Yeah, I'm not sure what country they're talking about. So I guess,
she's located in Sweden. I don't know if this is a Sweden-specific question, but she's located in Sweden, if that helps. Doesn't.
That does. I guess just to clarify one thing, if we're talking about visas, e-visas, I guess if it is electronic visas that she's asking about, what a lot of consulates have done to make the process easier these days is instead of having to file your application with the consulate that you're working with in the United States. So for example, like if you're going to China or Germany, wherever it is, you have to file your some countries require you to file a application with the consulate of that country in the United States, and then the consulate reviews the application and then provides the visa, and that's physically mailed, put in your passport and physically mailed back. But I know the Indian consulate in the States, at least, and abroad as well, have provided easier route to obtain visas, which in certain cases, you can apply for business visitor visas online, and that's an easier route. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. E-visas are available. They're becoming more and more available because that's just what millennials are expecting, is they're able to do it online themselves. They want to do it quickly, but sometimes you still need to file applications directly with the consulate. For example, China is still requiring that. So I'm not sure if that's a question she's asking, but
who knows? Really, who knows? Thank you, Lena, for the question. If it's not the question, feel free to clarify. We've got 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Also, got some other cool comments here. I'm not sure if you know this person at all. Could be a coincidence, maybe not. Great information and considerations highlighted about trends in the market from
Mariam.
Yeah, who might be your sister, might not be. Thanks for the analysis and discussion on this. Awesome. And then Tashi says, this is such great advice.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Love hearing that stuff. All right, cool. Oh, here she goes. She offered some clarification. She said, Lena says, I'm thinking about giggers that are doing what Ben is mentioning, that work from countries while traveling. Oh, so I'm wondering if there are special visas for traveling workers. So if I was,
yeah. So unfortunately, immigration sometimes is one of those industries that's slower to catch up with the way that the society is evolving. So we do see some countries offering, but it's still relatively new. We haven't seen much in terms of formal guidance for these types of remote workers and digital nomads for many countries, but I suspect that that's going to change in the next 4 to 5 years, I would say even. But oftentimes there's business visitor visas that you can take advantage of based on the types of activities you're performing in the country. So look into that. Oftentimes, for example, I know within the Schengen region in Europe, there are certain activities that you can perform without having to obtain an official work permit. So maybe review that list of activities that you're allowed to perform, even work-wise, without having to obtain a work authorization. And so make sure that you're within those guidelines. So really kind of exploring what's out there and how you can be creative in fitting your activities, work activities, in what's already allowed, and not risking being shut down by immigration officers.
It seems like the whole point of being a digital nomad is just taking your laptop and, just going through life and going through the world and just being free, and it's like, and you're like, research, the laws in every country and, research the list of activities you could do. And it's like, what a buzzkill. Like, I'm just trying to go chill in Thailand, right? Lena does offer, I guess you can't say that on your application, what a buzzkill, right? Lena's saying Estonia has a visa for this group. So I was wondering if you have come across anything similar. Good to know.
I have not worked with clients in Estonia, but I know, again, going back to the Schengen region, I know that my clients have said, okay, well, this is what I want to do. I have clients in France that want to meet with me. What do I do? I say, okay, well, as long as you're not performing any productive work, you could still say this is a business meeting, and it is a business meeting, and that's allowed, right, without obtaining work permit or work authorization. So how can we say, okay, don't cross this line. Let's talk about what activity you're doing. Don't cross this line. Don't sit there at the client's computer and do some productive data output, because that may not be allowed. But also you can sit there and have meetings about your plans to work together, and you can do that on site, or you could do that via Zoom. But how do I look at what's already available and how I can say, okay, well, don't do this, but you're allowed to do this. So that's how I've usually handled with my clients. I hope that more countries follow Estonia's example.
Mm-hmm.
Do kind of catch up with how people are working and the current climate.
Is that like a pamphlet or a flyer you might give to business travelers who are going to countries to say, this is what is considered productive work and this is what considered unproductive work?
We have country visa sheets. You can reach out to me and I could provide you. So if you're thinking about specific countries, I can provide you with, here's what's considered work activities, here's what's not considered work activities, here's the gray area.
Yeah.
Probably get something before you go.
I feel like half the things I do here are unproductive work, and I should therefore only pay half the taxes. That's my take on that.
You get the full pay.
Full pay, half the taxes. Zahra, this is fantastic. Thank you for spending this time with us. Is there any final closing words or anything you want to say to our audience?
Err on the side of caution when it comes to immigration. Err on the side of caution. At least talk to an immigration attorney, know what the rules are, and then come back to your internal key stakeholders in the business and say, okay, this is the risk. This is what we need to accomplish as a business. How much risk are we willing to take? Sometimes, some of my corporate clients say, I know that's the rule, but I'm going to break it because I'm going to lose out on this much business. But be informed and then do a risk and compliance analysis. Educate yourself before you do that.
This is Love and Relo, voice of the relocation industry. Thank you so much to Zara Najam, our guest today. Zara, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Ben. Thank you for everyone joining. I really appreciate it.
This is great. You got some great engagement on Facebook. This has been wonderful. Thanks, everybody.